I hate to say it, but it can be hard to get excited about new gear sometimes. Especially in the Eurorack realm, it takes something special to cut through the noise and make a big impact. The Oneiroi is something that completely blew me away at Superbooth 2024, something that left an impact and lasting impression, and I'm happy to say that now that I've gotten a chance to spend about a week with it, it's still one of the coolest things I've ever gotten a chance to play with. Hi, my name is Jeremy, this is Red Means Recording, and in this video I'm going to tell you why I think the Oneiroi is so cool, while we check out excerpts from almost 90 minutes of sound and video I've captured over the last few days. With the exception of the final piece, all the sounds are 100% all from the Oneiroi alone. For most of the demos, all we'll be pairing it with is Pamela's new workout, and even then I don't know if we would need that to make the Oneiroi shine. But I'll let you be the judge. Let's get started.
Oneiroi.
Oh, wait, real quick. I will be pronouncing this
Oneiroi
instead of Oneiroi, as the Greek pronunciation seems to be the correct one. The word means dreams, by the way, and in Greek mythology, dreams were the brothers or sons, depending on the author, of hypnos, or sleep. Okay. The Oneiroi is a self-contained synthesizer voice from Befaco. It's billed as a drone and pad synthesizer, and while it definitely can do that, I found it has a lot more going on than smooth and long. It can growl, scream, pulse, cry, and a bunch of other surprisingly organic things that were what drew me to it in the first place. My initial thoughts of how to do this video was to pair the sounds of the Oneiroi with the terrifying tapes from the horror movie Session 9, because the synth is incredible at a brand of disconcerting that I've not encountered in anything else. I tried to actually pair a section of this with video from it, but NBC blocked my video, so here it is with just the sound from the tapes.
Why did you do it, Simon?
Because Mary let me talk. They always do. They always do.
The soul of the Oneiroi revolves around a sound generation section and a sound processing or effects section. The sound generation section has a sine wave oscillator with pitch input and a secondary oscillator that tracks with the first one that can either be a Roland-style supersaw or a wavetable. The wavetable is very interesting in that it is determined by the recorded contents of the looper, which is another component of the sound generation section we'll get into in a bit. There's also a sound input, which you can use to process incoming sound, but I didn't try it for this video. But DivKid shows it off masterfully in his video, so go check that out. So you send a pitch into the pitch input of the oscillator and choose the mix of sine, supersaw, or wavetable, looper, and input. They have dedicated sliders for all these, and each one of these has its own dedicated CV input, so you can use a CV signal to mix them, or envelopes to create a sort of classic VCA-style voice kind of thing. The looper can be set up to record the incoming signal through the audio inputs of the Oneiroi with the pre-setting, or the output of the synth with the post-setting. The looper can record about 5 seconds of audio information, and then you can adjust the playback speed forward or reversed, very similar to Morphogene with this varispeed control. What I like to do sometimes is set it to record the output of the synth, turn sound on sound to about 50%, filtered about 50%, and play around with the varispeed control to get this sort of ever recursive loop going on while I play the rest of the synth. Letting the looper feedback on itself creates really cool sounds, especially in conjunction with the modulation of other channels. And also, because the wavetable oscillator is determined by the contents of the looper, you can create a constantly morphing oscillator shape. Once you get into the effects section, things get even weirder and cooler. First off is the filter. You can mix how much of this you want in the signal as well as CV modulate the mix. The filter has multiple modes like low pass, high pass, band pass, and one of the most interesting choices, comb. There's a resonance control that goes from mild to legitimately wild. On the full right, it introduces a chaotic noise oscillator to the filter signal, which I really, really like. The filter can also be set in different positions of the signal chain. You can set it at the beginning of the chain with setting 1, 2 is between the resonator and the echo, and 3 is between the echo and the ambience unit, and then 4 is at the end of the entire chain. All of these can be adjusted on the fly, which means you can change your filter position, looper settings, or second oscillator while playing to get wildly different results. After the filter is the resonator. This resonates sounds created in the sound generation side of the synthesizer. As far as I can tell, as long as there are sounds being made by anything on the left half of the unit, the resonator will have something to work off of. I found a lot of interesting uses for this part of the synth. Everything from apocalyptic drones to wonky percussion, doom marching drums, to alien cats. It can be tuned with CV, and there's a feedback control. It's one of the most interesting parts of the synth, as the feedback of the resonator can do wild things to both sides of the signal chain. After that, there are two space effects, echo and ambience. Echo is, well, it's an echo that can be clocked. It seems to be ping-pong by default and adds a ton of wonderful vibe. There's a DJ-style high-pass, low-pass filter for the feedback to make it darker or less muddy. The ambient section is also really crucial to the vibe of the Oneiroi. The space-time knob adjusts size, filtering, and direction all at once. At 50%, you get the smallest size and the brightest tone. At 0 or 100%, you get the biggest size and the darkest tone. And if you set the value to less than 50%, the input signal will be reversed. The decay knob will control how long the tail will take to fade out, as you might guess. This effect also has an auto panner that's synchronized with either the external sync input or the frequency of one looper cycle, which, considering the latter is modulatable, can get into some very interesting weirdness. There's a modulation section on the Oneiroi that features various LFO shapes and an adjustable speed that can be synced to the incoming clock. The incoming clock, however, also restarts the looper, so it's a bit of an odd relationship there. Normally, I would clock a delay with a quarter note, eighth note, or 16th note, or 1, 2, or 4 PPQ. But because it resets the looper, I found that was much too often. I would generally use like a bar long or 2 bar long clock, divide by 8 or divide by 16 from Pamela's new workout to get a clock speed that didn't reset the looper too often. The modulation section has a master knob that turns up modulation going to any of the destinations that it's set to go to, as a macro amount knob. You can choose how much of each parameter on the Oneiroi gets this internal modulation. And after you've set that up, the modulation section has a master knob that turns up modulation going to any of the destinations that it's set to go to. You can also choose the amount of modulation being done by incoming CV, which means you technically don't need attenuverters between your modulation source and the Oneiroi, which is a very nice feature. I found adding small amounts of modulation to things like resonator tuning and filter frequency could add really interesting underlying swells to your patch, sometimes with terrifying results. This was especially true when using the comb filter setting for the filter. Speaking of modulation, I really like combining slower drone-like movement on the oscillator section with rhythmic modulation to the resonator's tuning. This would lead to interesting slow fades and swells from the main section and crunchy abstract rhythms from the effects section. Last but not least, we have a randomization control, and this is what I was slamming with my finger over and over at Superbooth to just see what the Oneiroi could do. This has 4 potential targets selected with a switch. All the controls, just the oscillator section, the looper section, or the effects section. There's also an amount switch for the amount of randomization. The oscillator's pitch is randomized by semitones, but the faders and the supersaw wavetable selector are excluded from the randomization. Also excluded are all the secondary parameters accessed with the shift button, the modulation mapping, and the CV mapping. I never got bored seeing what strange place the Oneiroi could take me next, always finding some new strange edge case where I felt compelled to pull the camera over and record just one more session with it. If anyone asked me what gear I would reach for to score a horror movie or game, this would be in that list, for sure. Though it shares conceptual DNA with things like the Make Noise Strega, EOWave weather drones, and Forge Time VIC-X, I think Befaco have managed to create something wholly unique here that stands on its own terms. I can hear Strega and VIC-X in it, but it's more than the sum of its parts. It's an instrument, sometimes an entity, hypnotic and fascinating. I've uploaded about 40 minutes of audio-visual exploration with the Oneiroi to the second channel, trying to match the sounds I found with it with abstract footage that fits its mood. A lot of it is horror, but there's some sweet moments in there too. I put a link in the description and patrons will get the audio. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the Oneiroi. I look forward to seeing what other weird situations I can use it in, and what other weird sounds I can get out of it. Thank you to Befaco for providing this review unit. I truly appreciate the chance to try out an instrument this unique. So that's all for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jeremy. This is Red Means Recording, and I hope you have a wonderful day.